What do you think would happen to the broader NFT ecosystem if OpenSea shut down their API, kind of like, Twitter really restricted their API back in the day. It used to be very developer friendly, and now it's not so much. We'll see if that changes. But yeah, if OpenSea took that access back, how would that affect the broader like dApps and marketplaces that connect to that info?
Yeah, I think it would make it. I think it would probably hurt marketplace activity because there's web applications like aggregators, like what we try to do, or Genie and Gem, where they're kind of pooling listings together in a single interface. Things like trade bots on Twitter, would a lot of them would cease to exist. I think making the data more accessible kind of hurts like the overall like transaction volume. But there are people who are building solutions that are independent of OpenSea in order to bring these listings in. I think for them, they always incentivize. I mean, they want that data to be out there. They want people to kind of build on top of the activity that happens on their marketplace. So I don't think it's something that they would consider.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would definitely. I think it's sort of just. I guess uh, it's not sort of the goal for them is to make their data harder to access, or I think it's more so just wanting to provide builders with the data that they have so that more people are using their marketplace, or seeing their listings, or
Yeah.
understanding like why their assets have liquidity because of all that trade volume that they produce.
Yeah, makes sense. And do you know anything about Looks Rare on how and their listings? Are they also providing an API, or does their stuff list exist on chain?
Yes, so they also have a off-chain order system. They have a lot of interesting nuances for those, for their sort of listing infrastructure that allow you to do things, maybe less on the listing side, but do things like collection offers, right? Where I can go on LooksRare and say, hey, I'll pay 20 ETH for any mutant instead of having to go through in each individual one and post offers, which is great, right? Like that kind of gives the ability that people who know how to make bot offers and do across multiple assets, they give that accessibility to everybody. They do have an API. I think it's still sort of in this beta stage where they contact certain applications to test it, and while they're building out the different endpoints and making it usable. But Lookshare, I think, is an excellent. They do things slightly differently than OpenSea, but I think they're very passionate about making sure that third parties have access to that data. I think even somewhat more complicated with like listing rewards and allowing aggregators to kind of pass that through.
Yeah.
But it seems like they put a ton of effort into that, and their team's extremely talented.
Yeah.
So
It's just
no concerns in terms.
interesting. Yeah, it's interesting that they also have some of this off-chain data structures that you're talking about also offer an API, because it the common conversation is decentralized or centralized, right, versus OpenSea and LooksRare, and they still do have some of these, I'm going to put air quotes, like centralized mechanics around the data and the actual transactions, and that may not be that like level of information, or might escape a lot of people that are commenting about this stuff online. But while they do have really interesting staking mechanisms and they have a token, some of the actual operations from a company perspective are still following a lot of the same practices that you're seeing centralized companies do, because of the problems you bring up. On-chain data storage is expensive, and for LooksRare, who touts themselves as decentralized, right, still is following some of these off-chain practices.
Yeah, I think it's almost a utilitarian approach. If you released a marketplace like Looksrare and you were charging people more money to list, or to sort of interact with your platform, it'd be really hard as an upstart marketplace that has already huge challenges in terms of how do we get first a bunch of people to list, and they've done a great job incentivizing that recently, and then also rewarding people to buy, and especially when as a consumer you could go to OpenSea, and initially who had 95 or 96% of all transaction volume. Starting a marketplace is very difficult. So
Yeah.
while, yeah, I think right now in order to be a competitive marketplace, you do have to have these off-chain mechanics that save people money. I would say that they would probably argue that the other decentral sort of functions of their marketplace, with rewarding people with a token, is for the greater good, that they do have these things that make them a competitive marketplace and do drive consumers to their site. But yeah, and then hopefully I think a lot of the it's not really for the marketplace, or you don't want to place blame on the marketplaces for having these mechanics, even though it's probably not the most like ideal decentral way of doing business, because a lot of the limitations are on sort of the blockchain infrastructure side, not so much how the marketplace is built. But yeah, definitely, I think it's something that not everybody has insight to, that does make it harder to build in Web3 in general.
You're listening to the Unstoppable Podcast, the go-to place for everyone to learn about the latest innovations in Web3, NFTs, and the decentralized web. Welcome to the metaverse.